Engine repair 2 test 13, cylinder head and valve service. So we're going to see about this one here. Cylinder head with 4 valves flow more air than with 2 valves because what? Both A and C, they got a greater open area and they use a higher lift camshaft. Really, right? Increase the velocity of the air. How in the world does it increase the velocity of the air just because you got more valves?
Because there's more valves for the airflow, there's more air coming in.
If I got a bigger hole, I got slower air. Right? Huh?
It's less compressed and the bigger hole goes.
That's true.
So, I mean, if I make a smaller hole, it's going to pick up speed, basically, right? It'll go faster through 2 small holes than it will through 1 big hole, depending on how the thing's drafted. But anyway, that's basically going to be D. That's going to be have a greater open area and increase the velocity of air. They don't, not because they use a higher lift camshaft. 2 technicians are discussing a Hemi engine. Technician A says a Hemi is an engine with a hemispherical shaped combustion chamber. Technician B says all Hemi engines are cam and block designs. Who's right about that?
C.
That's D right there. Technician A says that an Audi 5-valve engine uses 3 intake valves and 2 exhaust valves. Technician B says it uses 3 exhaust valves and 2 intake valves. Who knows about that?
I thought the valve had the exhaust and the intake valve. I don't know if that back on all this, so I'm just going to say both of them wrong.
Yeah. Well, basically what you're going to do, if I look at the cylinder head, if you're just looking at it and you just, which valve is always going to be the intake valve of the 2? No, the intake valve is the bigger one. The intake valve is always the bigger one. So you're going to have 3 intake valves and 2 exhaust valves on a 5-valve engine. I mean, you'll have more intake valves than you will exhaust valves. A little more coming in there. Okay, gasket surface of a cylinder head measured with a straight edge should have a maximum variation of what? A, 20 thousandths inch in any 10-inch length or 20 thousandths overall. 4 thousandths inch in any 10-inch length or 8 thousand overall. 1 thousandth inch in any 6-inch length or 4 thousand overall. 2 thousandths of an inch in any 6-inch length or 4 thousandths of an inch overall.
C.
Well, that's actually D there. Yeah.
Which one?
That's D. Oh, D is, yeah, it's got to be really flat. 2 thousandths of an inch in a 6-inch length or 4 thousandths overall. A warped aluminum cylinder head can be restored to useful service by doing what? Heating it in an oven at 500 degrees with shims under each end, allowing it to cool, and then machining it. Our machinist at the Ford place built an oven to do that from scratch. And he would have a piece of plate that he used. He had a piece of steel he actually ran through his cylinder head machine and flattened it out, drilled it so that it would match these Escort cylinder heads. He'd bolt those things down to that plate. He'd put them in an oven, 500 degrees, let them cool off, and he'd machine them. He'd fix the cylinder head. You can actually flatten it out that way. But you got to get it really, really hot, you know. So, some vehicle manufacturers recommend repairing integral guides with what?
D.
Oversized stem valves. OS stem valves would be typical intake valve to stem glide. Typical intake valve stem to guide clearance is supposed to be what? What do you think?
B.
How about 1 to 4 thousandths of an inch, which is 25 hundredths to 76 hundredths of a millimeter? How much is 25 hundredths of a millimeter in thousandths of an inch? Anybody know? Actually, that's not 25 hundredths. That's 2.5 hundredths on that one there. But 25 hundredths of a millimeter is 10 thousandths of an inch, and so 0.025 millimeters is not 25 hundredths of a millimeter. I read that wrong. So basically, that's 1/10 of that. Get me? What's this? Everybody needs to know this. 1 millimeter, and this is approximate, equals 40 thousandths. So .25 millimeter equals 10. Why? Because you break this in 4 parts, you got 10. You break that in 4 parts, you got .25. Bring it? Got it? Understand it. Live it, learn it. Alright. Let me see. What other engine component may have to be machined if the cylinder heads are machined on a V-type engine? What do you think, Webb? If you machine the heads, what do you got to do? What else you got to do? What else do you have to machine to make it work right on a V-type engine? Intake manifold is the only thing it can be on a V. You got me? And because the angle is wrong, whenever you got to change the angle. What type of valve guide is most used in a cast iron cylinder head? Integral is made into the cylinder head. Which of these statements is true about surface finish? Everybody knows, or the rougher the surface, the higher the micro-inch finish measurement. Now these Crown Victoria cylinder heads, like what we have in this police car out here, those things are just about machined to aircraft specifications, and you can't just do a regular machining, operation on those. You got to be able to do it just the right way. Of course, I expect Billy Pilcher to probably do it because he can do about anything. Technician A is the most says the most commonly used combustion chamber types include hemispherical and wedge. Technician B says the coolant and lubricating openings and passages are located throughout most cylinder heads. What you got there? That's Charlie. Both technicians are right about that. And Technician A says a cylinder head resurfacing machines include grinders and milling machines. Technician B says a cylinder head reconditioning should start with resurfacing of valves. Who's right about that? That's A right there. Technician A says the only valve guide repair option for integral valve guides is to use oversized stem valves. Technician B says the valve guide should be checked for wear using a ball gauge or dial indicator. Number 13 is B, actually. Not the only. Listen, guys, buzzword guys, always, only, all. That's gonna be a deal breaker on them questions. Always, only, all, always. And whenever you hear that word, that's a suspect. That's suspect. That means that that's probably not a true statement. If you hear always, all, always, anytime they're trying to make it absolute, you got about a 9 out of 10 time chance that that's going to be a false statement. The other one's one that gets you, right? Let's see. Hemispherical combustion chambers use which of these? Do they create a turbulent air fuel charge? Do they use parallel valves? Are they non-turbulent? Or they always use 4 valves per cylinder? What is that? That's going to be A. Turbulent air fuel charge. You like that. You like turbulence. Why do you like turbulence? You get better flame propagation. You get better combustion. All right. For lowest hydrocarbon emissions, which of these engine design features is used? A. Low combustion chamber surface area to volume ratio. B. Non-centrally mounted spark plug. C. Increased as much as possible quench area. D. High combustion chamber surface area to volume ratio.
D.
That's A. See that little red Tempo I got out there has got high swirl combustion, pistons in it.
Is that yours?
Yeah, it's my dad's. I'm supposed to sell it for him.
Okay,
How much?
I was wondering why you said
You can buy it if you want to, but the last time you asked me if I'd sell something, I gave you a price. You didn't ever talk to me about it again.
I'm just curious on how much.
How much you sell that camera for in
in
there? That camera there, I'll sell it $75. Oh, I'm not interested in it. All right, but I'll give you a price on it later.
No, I have a
We'll
friend
talk.
who needs a car, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, well, sure. I'll talk to him about it. It's only got 80,000 miles on it or something. 83,000.
80,000?
83,000 miles. Yeah.
My friend would definitely be interested. He's
All right, let me see here. Which one were you on before I got off?
Stealing his feet.
16.
16. Well, to ensure proper engine cooling, most cylinder head designs use what? A. Short exhaust ports and long intake ports. B. Large exhaust crossover passages. C. Coolant passages restricted by head gaskets. Or D. Long exhaust ports and short intake ports. Y'all are just plumb confused about that, aren't you? All right. Short exhaust ports and long intake ports. But the cylinder head design, I tell you something else though. Coolant passage is restricted by head gaskets is something else that makes it cool properly. And I don't really like that answer to that question. Not with them two choices there. if I was taking this test and I was somebody just going along here, I would put C. You know, because if you got, we got some head gaskets one time from a guy that was, hey, you probably ought to be test driving your red car when you get through your burger, okay? All right. I mean, I know you're still eating, but, you know, lunch was over 20 minutes ago. All right. Let me see here.
I'm trying to learn something over here.
That's not an excuse. You need to just be working on that car. All right. You learned something out there, too. Okay, let me see. One way or another, we got some intake gas. We got some. There's a guy named Shannon Smith that was working there one time. I mean, that was going through the program, and he was from Elba, and he was gonna put cylinder head gaskets on a 3.8 liter Taurus engine. And when he got them cylinder head gaskets out of the pack, and they were Fel-Pro gaskets, he compared them to the old gaskets, which was very smart, very smart. And he says, look at these gaskets, there's a difference in them. You know the little small holes where the water's supposed to go through there that slows it down so they can take some heat? They were cut exactly the same size as the, and that would have burnt that motor up. I mean, he was sharp. He found that, you know. And I said, you were sharp to catch that. So I called the parts house, and they called Fel-Pro, and Fel-Pro goes, oh no, don't put those gaskets on there. Ah, we'll send you some more. It scared the daylights out of them, because I mean, it would have been burned it up. It would have been their gasket's fault. See, because they were cut wrong. I mean, so just because it's a reputable, and I'm not saying anything bad about Fel-Pro. I mean, they recognized that something had happened wrong, you know, and they had to take care of that. But the fact that he had enough presence of mind to lay those gaskets side by side and look at them. Something else you got to pay attention to when you're putting head gaskets on. You need to pay attention to the words on the gaskets. Up, front, you know, this kind of thing. If it doesn't have anything marked on it, you know, look at it both ways and see if there's any, you know, like I'm saying, don't just assume that you can throw it on there any kind of way, because if it says up and front and all that, pay attention to that. Watch that. Okay, let me see. Which of these operations should be performed first?
B.
Resurfacing the head, grinding the valves, grinding the seats, or installing replacement guides. That's A. You resurface the head first. Overhead cam valve adjustment can be made by all of these messages except A. Shims, B. Adjusting screws, C. Cap lifters, or D. Hydraulic lifters. Everybody right about it? It says about C. How about C? Cap lifters. C is not good. Not a good answer according to this. The use of a knurling tool is being described. You know what a knurling tool is?
Mm-hmm.
When you hear about something that's been knurled, what do you think about?
Like a curving deal.
Sir?
Like curled up and rolled over.
Well, sort of. What about the handle on a ratchet?
What?
The handle on a ratchet. You know, the old, you know, that's called knurling. Whenever you see something like that, it looks like it's made for you to hold on to. But when you knurl them, what does it do? It makes them a little bigger. The outside diameter changes a little bit. You can actually knurl an inside surface or an outside surface. As a matter of fact, there was some of the, and this is sort of dumb, but some of the pistons were having piston slap in some 302 Ford engines one time, and piston slap is when the piston goes back and forth like this because it's a little too loose in there. And so Ford had us pull those pistons out of those engines and send them to the machine shop and have them knurled. And when they knurled them, they basically, you know, cut some little lines in there, and it sort of squished those things up and made them a little bigger, you know, a little bit bigger, so that they would fit a little snugger and it didn't hurt a doggone thing. But that's basically what knurling is all about. You knurl those valve guides. In addition to that, it gives the oil somewhere to be. You see something here? That's a pretty cool little thing there. All right. Now then, but that's what that's about. After the knurling tool displaces the metal inside the guide, a what is run through to produce a restored serviceable valve guide? That's going to be a reamer. A reamer. Okay. We're 14 minutes in and going strong. 20. Technician A says the intake valve runs hotter than the exhaust valve because the intake valve has a greater surface area. Technician B says the exhaust valves usually don't burn due to the scavenging effect of the exhaust stream. Who's right about that? That's D, actually. Neither one of them. In a normal operating engine, intake and exhaust valves are opened by a cam and closed by what? If you got that car put it back together where you can drive it, set it on the floor and take it down the road, see how it runs, see if it soils up like a possum, and you know, call my cell phone if it quits, and we'll come get somebody to drag you in.
Okay.
Okay.
Should I take some fluid out of it? With it or
No, just
how-
drive it
how-
like it is, and then we'll get some fluid out of it if we need to. I mean, but just take it for a drive. You're not gonna hurt it with that little dab of fluid, extra fluid in it.
Yeah, how do you know how much more that is with the numbers being weird like that?
Well, you'll just have to drain it down to where it's
Oh,
right.
ringing?
Yeah, you'll have to drive. No, my phone is. It may be ringing, but I ain't gonna answer it right now. Go out there and drive that car. Let me know how it runs, and I'll probably need to come back for you and drive it behind you. That is. Number 21. Is that one we're on?
Yeah.
That's actually B. Valve springs. What do you mean? Valve guides and push rods don't close the valves. Come on.
I set it up.
Okay.
You had me ask that
That was my
question.
fault.
If an interference angle is machined on a valve or seat, the angle is usually how much? What the heck is an interference angle? Anybody know?
No clue.
D.
All right, let's draw it.
It's D.
Interference angle. You got your old. You ever hear Joe Gearhead talking about his three-angle valve job? All valve jobs are three-angle valve jobs if you do it right. All right, now that's your seat. All right, this is your valve, and I'm drawing this. I'm expanding this, and this little angle right here is what they're talking about. It's not perfectly parallel. This angle is slightly different from that one, the way I've drawn it. That's the interference angle. This is the part where it's going to be seating. You're going to have a 1 degree difference between this angle and that angle. You understand what I'm saying? That's an interference angle. Now, why do they do that? That's going to make it seal better. When that thing is pulling against that, if this is this way on both sides, that's going to seal that valve better. You know, because a little bit of stretch. If it's 1 degree is a little bit, it's just going to make a perfect seal. You know, if you don't have that, you may have some air leak in between there. But I mean, this is really, you got to be really, really tight with your angles and all that, and everything's got to be really precision. Everything. So that's an interference angle. Never remove more material from the tip of a valve than how many inches? That's A, actually. What a wild guess. Okay, that's 20. That's 20 thousandths. A valve should be discarded if the margin, and this is the margin right here, guys. See this part right here? The margin is that part right there.
So 22 is A?
That's the margin. Right there.
26 1 degree, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. A valve should be discarded if the margin is less than blank inches after refacing. D. D is the answer. And see, this one right here is a little teeny tiny valve that come out of a Toyota Camry engine. Looks like a valve in a British Stratton lawnmower. You see that one's bent?
Yeah.
That's a bent valve. And that's obviously messed up. It ain't going nowhere, but the margin is right on the edge of it, and how much flat area there's right there. Okay, if the margin is less than 3 thousandths of an inch, or actually 3/10. Is that 3 thousandths or 30 thousandths?
What, D?
Yeah, D is 0.03. That's 30, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
All right.
30,000.
Well, see that basically there's less resolution there than there is if you got 30 thousandths. So that's basically, is that 3/100ths of an inch, right?
Yes.
Isn't it? 0.03 is 3/100ths. A valve seat should be concentric to the valve guide to a maximum total indicator runout of what?
H.
Charlie? No. 2 thousandths. To lower and narrow a valve seat that has been cut at a 45 degree angle, use a cutter stone of what angle? B, 30 degrees. To lower and narrow, now the valve seat is this part right here. You notice I got a 3 angle here? I got 3 angles, right? This one right here is your 45 degree one. But if you're gonna change this, you're gonna move it farther down, and you're making it narrower by doing the grinding that you're gonna be doing with these other rocks, you see, the 30 and the 60 degree rock. Of course, you guys are probably not going to be doing valve jobs anyway. You know, typically, like you do what mine, I'm going to send mine to the machine shop and I'll let them handle it. You know, I'm not going to fool around. I got the stuff here to do this with, but we don't typically do a valve job here. You know, just because of the fact that it's too much trouble to, you know, keep those rocks dressed and all that kind of junk. You know, it's not a machine shop. You know what I'm saying? We actually, you know, we fix cars. We don't do machine work. Not a whole lot. We show you how it's done so that you'll understand what's going on. But I'm not going to sit here and give you a test to make sure that you do a valve job, you know, just exactly right. That's for other people to teach. Let me see. Where are we at? 20. Valve spring inserts, or shims, if you will, are designed to do what? What do you think they would be good for? You want the correct valve spring installed height. When you take valve springs off, you're actually supposed to measure them to be for square and height and all that. The proper relationship between intake and exhaust valve diameter is what? Exhaust valve size is 85% of intake valve size. Remember what I told you? The big one's the intake valve? So the exhaust valve is only 85% as big as the intake valve size. Dampers, or in parentheses, damper springs, are used inside some valve springs to, what are they there for?
B?
You seen those? They got a little spring inside the outside spring. Have you seen that, Webb? You seen that? And so, have you ever known what those were for?
It could be.
They prevent valve spring surge. Got it? Umbrella type valve stem seals. What? A, fit tightly onto the valve stem. Now this is another thing. Watch this. Whenever you're putting valve stem seals on one, and you may well be doing that, you can do that with a vehicle in the car, with the engine in the car. Make sure that you use good ones. You can get some valve stem seals that are really cheap and crappy, that look like they're okay. And we made the mistake of putting some like that one time on a Dodge that Lamont did when he was here. And what happened was he put them on there the right way. But, and this is really interesting, they actually moved up the valve stem, and it was just like you didn't have any valve stem seals on there, and it started pulling oil by the intake valve, because the intake valve's got, there's vacuum right down at the bottom, in the area at the bottom of that intake valve guide. So there's vacuum there, so it starts sucking oil down through there, and it was smoking. And it was enough oil being sucked down through there, it was confusing the oxygen sensor. It was changing the, reading the oxygen sensor was getting. And so, he says he was way off over yonder in another town. He took it to the Dodge dealership, and they wanted to replace the oxygen sensor, but we would just put one on it. And then but it was oil smoking something terrible, just pumping smoke out the back. So he had to go back in there and pull the valve cover off, and you pull the rocker arms off, and you air up the cylinder so the valve won't fall out. And then you take the springs off, and you put some good valve stem seals on there. Don't put cheap valve stem seals on there. You'll be sorry you did. You have to go back and do it again. But that thing was burning oil and everything else, because when we pull the valve springs off, the seals. I like the ones that's got the garter spring that fits down on there real tight, instead of just a little rubber one that looks like an umbrella that you just slide on there. I don't like those. Never have liked them. But anyway, that's number 30 is going to be A. Technician A said a valve spring should be kept with the valve at the time of disassembly and tested for squareness and proper spring force. There's actually a tool for that. Technician B says exhaust valve is about 50% of the size of the intake valve. Nah, that's A only. We already covered that territory. That ship has sailed. Number 32, the type of valve in use today is what? Anybody know?
Is it B?
Aluminum.
How about a poppet?
Poppet.
Poppet. Technician A says that free and positive are two types of valve rotators. Technician B says valve grinding should start with truing the valve tip, then the face should be refinished. Which technician is correct? That's C. Valve stem height is most critical on which of these? Adjustable solid lifter systems, adjustable hydraulic lifter systems, non-adjustable solid lifter systems, or non-adjustable rocker arm systems. Which one would you think, just guessing at it? Non-adjustable rocker arm systems. Technician A says a pilot is placed in the valve guide to position the stone or cutter correctly for resurfacing the valve seat. That's that stem that you put down through that valve guide that your thing rides over. Technician B says that the installed height should be checked and corrected with oversized valves if needed. Remember, what do you think about that? 35? That's A. Technician A says the closed coil end of a valve spring should go against the cylinder head.
Well, you missed 36.
Did we skip 36? Excuse me. Technician A says valve stem height should be checked and the top of the valve ground if necessary. Technician B says after a thorough cleaning, the cylinder head should be assembled using new valve stem seals. 36, that's C. Always use new valve stem seals. I'll tell you something else. If you ever take a head to the machine shop to do a valve job, they're always going to put new valve stem seals on there. They will have you always, unless you're a dummy, if you just go over, if you go take your cylinder head to the machine shop and drop it off and say, do this, usually the guy's going to say, you've already bought a head gasket set anyway. He said, I need your valve stem seals. So if you're taking the cylinder head to the machine shop, go ahead and take your valve stem seals with it, instead of having to go back where you come from and get your valve stem seals and bring them back by there. You know, it's easy to forget that, but if you're taking it to the machine shop, get that little bag of valve stem seals that came out of your cylinder head set and carry them over and give them to him. Let him use those, because, you know, if you think he's going to come up with valve stem seals, that's a joke. It ain't happening. No, you're going to want to buy those. All right. I forgot what number we was on. Technician A says the closed coil end of a valve spring should go against the cylinder head. Technician B says the closed coil end goes toward the retainer. Who's right about that? That's A. Technician A says, Technician A says all valves rotate to help prevent the valves and seats from burning. Technician B says positive type valve rotators are only used on intake valve. Who's right about that? That's D. Neither one of them. You know, the lead that used to be in gasoline a long time ago would actually coat the valves and help them last longer now. So, all right. So, of course, it also messed up the catalytic converter when they started putting those on there, so they take it out. All right. Let me see. Technician A says exhaust valve's larger than intake valve. He's wrong. Technician B says exhaust valve's larger. He's wrong. 39. You know it ain't wrong. D is wrong. The answer for that one. 40. Without the use of leaded gasoline, how does the manufacturer keep the valves and seats from wearing out? Harder valves and seats. Turbocharged engines will typically have stainless steel valves. Did you know that?
You said something about that before.
Yep. Which of these is the coolest part of the valve? The stem. You should know that, because it's actually not down there where the combustion's taking place. It's up there in the cylinder head. Which of these is the most common valve spring keeper? A split key. You've all done these before. You'll pull a valve out of the head and seen those split keys. Okay, which part of the valve is called the valve margin? Huh? Which part is it?
C.
You sure? That's right. Is that right? Look, I lose my paper here. That's C. Hey. All right. So, okay. Now, finally, 43. We're going to go. Wait a minute. That's 43. I just did, wasn't it? Which of these components is the valve stem seal?
See the beard D?
What do you think? I would say it's D, wouldn't you? D as in dog, delta, dynamite, this kind of thing.
43.
Huh? 43? Yeah, the margin is basically C. Look at C. That's what I drew up there.